going, folks? Welcome to FoundFlix. It's been nearly 10 years since the indie game Five Nights at Freddy's burst onto the scene and has grown into an absolutely huge media franchise. Thusly, it was only a matter of time until those deadly animatronics got a movie of their very own. So we're going to be checking out the new Five Nights at Freddy movie and explaining everything you need to know. Adapting a video game into a movie is always a tricky translation, and with Five Nights at Freddy's, the gameplay is really simple, pretty much just pressing buttons and looking at monitors. I do feel like the filmmakers did a good job of adapting the most important aspects of the game, while also actually changing enough to make it work as a full-length movie. I was a bit shocked that the movie got hammered pretty hard by critics, and the movie isn't perfect by any means. Also, suck at critics because it made a lot of cash. I also feel it's important to remember that this is for kids. The games don't really have any gore or anything like that, and to me this is an excellent new gateway horror, perfect for kids without being too scary. Now, I'm no expert on the series, but I can do research, and there is a ton to explore regarding the story and how it ties back to the games in some intriguing way. It also is kind of a remix in a lot of ways of the first three games, with some major differences as well. So let's clock in for Five Nights at Freddy's, breaking down the story, including the major differences from the games, exploring the several mysteries left dangling, as well as explaining the ending and post-credit scene that sets up a sequel. The opening gives us an insight as to the reason behind the high turnover rate at Freddy's establishment, the murderous robots obviously. A terrified security guard attempts to escape his attackers via the air ducts. He makes it through, spotting Foxy's silhouette nearby. He makes it all the way to the back door out, but it's jammed shut. Foxy is heard doing his trademark scatting and really rapidly approaches the guy. Man, he's fast. He gets strapped into a chair, and a kind of half of a robot skeleton whirs to life with red eyes and shredding saw blades. He struggles to get free from his restraints, but there's no escaping this time, bucko, and the blades tear him to shreds. We then pass through the rest of the pizzeria, looking long abandoned but strangely still active, and hone in on a wall covered in children's drawings, focusing on one in particular featuring 5 kids with a yellow bunny. While it might look like he's pals with the kids, the opening credits preemptively spill the beans that is not the case. In 8-bit style, we see as the bunny approaches children one by one at the restaurant and whisks them away for his nefarious purposes. We then meet down on his luck Mike, doing his best to make ends meet and take care of his younger sister Abby. He's not exactly equipped to be her parental figure, and the girl doesn't quite respect him when he asks her to obey. The reality is, Mike is much more preoccupied with the tragedy from his past, losing his brother Garrett during one fateful family camping outing. In a kind of strange element to the story, Mike is convinced that through his dreams, he can somehow remember more details about what happened that day, and who kidnapped his brother. He discusses this concept with his coworker, rattling off that a dreamer that remains asleep will walk through their memories as if experiencing it for the first time. They are no longer a passenger, but an active participant in their memories. The idea being that he can actually become active in his dreams and memories, as outlandish as that might sound. That's how dedicated Mike is to finding out what happened, and pretty much everything else in his life, including Abby, takes a back seat. We see how his obsession comes out in other problematic ways when he notices a young boy on his own at the mall. A man grabs him and takes him away, and Mike assumes that he's being kidnapped for some reason. He springs into action and beats the hell out of the dude in a flurry of fists, only to find out later that it was the boy's dad. Major whoops. And this really shows us how obsessed he is with getting justice for Garrett, even framing things in his mind in a way that he can somehow save the day, even if it is completely untrue, like the scene at the mall. Mike winds up fired for the incident and meets with a shady career counselor Steve Ragland to assess his options. There isn't much hope at this point, thanks to Mike's spotty employment history, barely lasting a few weeks at most of his jobs. He lets him down that there really isn't much they can do, but just about to leave, Steve stops him with one final position available for a security job. Mike mumbles that he can't do nights, and Steve scoffs, well, that's a shame, handing him his card in case he changes his mind. He returns home to mounting bills and relieves the babysitter Max of her duties. Did Abby eat? What do you think? She retorts. Mike tries to convince her she has to eat, but Abby does not budge on the matter, especially as her imaginary friend thinks that he's an idiot. Well, at least I'm real, he smirks. Mike gets ready for bed and gets everything set up for proper dreaming, nature sounds, and a poster of Nebraska on the ceiling. He focuses in and drifts to sleep and is brought back to that moment where Garrett was taken. He's there with the rest of his family, along with a bunch of other families also on the campgrounds. Mom tasks Mike to watch over Garrett, and he goes to retrieve a frisbee. A car engine sputters to life, and when he turns back, there's no sign of his brother. The car skids away, and turning into his older self, Mike sees Garrett being driven away, glued to the back window. There's even more issues that Mike has to be dealing with. His overbearing and well, quite dickish Aunt Jane. She's hell-bent on getting Abby away from Mike, believing he is not fit to be her guardian. Yet alone with the teacher, Mike knows that all she's really after is a government check. He glumly believes that Abby doesn't really even care about him, and the teacher begs to differ, bringing up an important idea to the story. Children use pictures in an important way in order to communicate complicated feelings as well as to try to understand the world around them. And who is at the center of most of her drawings? Me, Mike realizes. Yep, so she does care about him. In fact, he is her entire world, like it or not. A good first step, she suggests, is to find himself a job. With no other options, he phones Steve back and begins the first of his Five Nights at Freddy's. He gives him a brief tease to the place's history. Back in the 80s, it was huge with kids, but not anymore, seeing it all boarded up and run down. The reason they haven't torn it down, he says, is that the owner is just too sentimental. He can't bring himself to let it go, Steve laughs knowingly. He warns that the electricity is a bit funky, so if anything goes wrong, just flip the main breaker in the office. All he's gotta do is keep an eye on the monitors and keep people out. Mike turns on the breaker and the building roars to life, including its big fancy sign out front featuring Freddy. He clicks on the monitors, fuzzing 2 cameras stationed all around the premises. He scans through them one by one, the place looking pretty quiet. Idling in the room, he's confused when noticing a video cassette tape with his name on it. He pops it in and is treated to a vintage training video from Freddy's heyday. A lady touts the genius that opened the place, indulging in his 2 greatest passions, family fun and cutting-edge technology. She goes on to introduce the stars of the show. Yet, just when they're about to perform, the tape glitches right over it. Wonder why that is. She concludes by tasking the newest employee to protect their proprietary ideas so they can keep Freddy going for years to come. Wow, that certainly didn't work out as planned. That's what happens when you get child murder in your pizzeria. Mike gets his first encounter with the rogue animatronics in an innocuous way, finding the tiny balloon boy hiding in a locker. It doesn't really do much, just kind of stands there, but more on that later. What is up with the balloon boy? Why is he so tiny? Time ticks by, and he eventually passes out due to boredom. Static comes over the PA system, and he's brought back to his family picnic. He helplessly watches Garrett get carted off again, yet things are different this time. He finds 5 kids waiting for him, asking if they saw what happened. He gets more animated, and the kids scatter in different directions. He chases a blonde boy, but trips on a rock, launching him right back to the waking world. He returns home to the routine of Max babysitting Abby, and he promises that he will pay her soon. She jokes back that it's fine, she does know where he lives after all. However, it turns out that Max doesn't have the best intentions here, following her and her brother as they meet with mean Aunt Jane and her lawyer Doug. And who is their waiter? I don't know, he looks familiar, but I'm not too sure. Some guy that makes a weird comment about something just being a theory. I don't know. Turns out Jane actually hired Max to search the house to find any evidence of criminal negligence. Doug gets concerned, realizing that he shouldn't even be hearing about their illegal activities, in particular after Jeff suggests to just kill Mike. He comes up with a slightly less violent idea. Since Mike needs his new job to look good to the courts, they could go in there and trash the place to make him look bad and get him fired. Just like that, boom, Abby is hers. Mike gets ready for another shift and Abby insists that she tag along. He refuses and carries her screaming back into her room, leaving Max to deal with her tantrum. Mike takes his Nebraska poster from home and does a bit of dreaming at work. The crackling returns and lightning rumbles, lighting up the hallway, noticing a particular silhouette on the wall. Back to chasing after his brother, he loses him once more. The kids are back, and he tries to stay calm this time, just wanting to know what they saw. And Mike's aggression takes over, causing him to flee. He chases a different kid with red hair. He grabs his shoulder, and the boy gets him with a hook in his hand. He screams, black ooze streaming from his eyes, and Mike wakes up to the power going haywire, talking in my sleep playing over the speakers. He resets the breaker, spotting Foxy looming in the shadows, and he sees that he has a surprise visitor at the door in Officer Vanessa. Right off the bat, she notices his injury, which interestingly implies that the dream world can also somehow affect the real world. Get hurt in the dream world to get hurt in the real world. She is highly dubious of Mike due to his injury and shifty demeanor. While he's not too sure about her either, as she seems quite intimately familiar with the establishment. All that she admits is that she loved it here as a kid, and asks excitedly if he's met them yet. Met who? Mike wonders. Then Freddy and his crew finally make their triumphant debut, performing a spirited cover of the Romantics' Talking in My Sleep. Mike is stupefied, while Van deems the show the best thing ever. Mike gets her back to an earlier topic that she brought up, some kids that went missing back in the 80s, and she tells him this is what caused a place to close down. Well, makes sense. She chides him for not knowing the history, and he's not even wearing his badge. So she procures him one from the prize counter, declaring that now he's official. 6 a.m. arrives, and Mike has another night down without much much incident. That all changes when we see Jeff watching nearby, and he calls his goons to wreck the place. But they are in for a rude awakening from the Freddy gang showing off their more murderous side. After they make their way through the place, bashing everything up good, Carl is lured to a fridge by a loud thudding. Inside he discovers an oddly cute little cupcake guy, and it disappears when he gets distracted by another noise. That was made by Chica carrying the cupcake on a plate. It lunges at Carl, going right for his face. You ever had a cupcake take a bite out of you? The big guy Hank witnesses the bizarre sight and hides in another room, only to have Bonnie in there waiting for him. We hear him screaming and bones cracking, and Hank places a bloody handprint on the door. Jeff is absolutely flabbergasted. He tries the phone, hearing a mix of children giggling and crying at the same time. On the monitors, Chica and Bonnie stare right at him and place cupcake into the vents. Jeff holds the chomping cupcake at bay, leaning on the vent while it sends sparks flying. The door swings open teasingly, and Jeff makes a break for it. Out in the halls, we hear the telltale scatting, and Foxy gets his prey. Only Max is left, and she begrudgingly heads inside the pizzeria in search of the others. A child's voice giggles and tells her to follow after. She finds herself in the maintenance room, coming face to face with Freddy. Getting warmer, he whispers. Max gets right up in there, getting dangerously close to those metal jaws. A hand reaches out from within and drags her, and the teeth bite her clean in half. At home, Abby and Mike's relationship gets more complications when she happens to find the custody papers from Jane. Abby gets upset. She does not like Aunt Jane, and he's happy that she isn't a fan of her aunt either, complaining that she smells of old cigarettes. They get a surprise visitor from Vanessa, who informs them of the break-in, and based on the evidence, including a prescription bottle left behind, all signs point to Mike being negligent. Well-oh. Thusly, he spills about what he's really been up to with his dreams, and not only did he lose Garrett, but this led to losing both his parents not long after. So it really has just been him and Abby for quite some time at this point. He can't help but remember the good old days when the whole family would sit down to dinner and say grace. It did feel cheesy at the time, but now he misses it terribly. Vanessa comforts him that he does still have Abby, and that makes him pretty lucky in her eyes. She lets him off the hook, tossing his pills into the river, but urges him no more sleeping when he's at Freddy's. As he cannot get a hold of Max, he has no choice but to bring Abby along to work, but orders her to stay in her tent no matter what. In the supply closet, he notices some blood and gets startled again by Balloon Boy. This thing's just popping around all over the place. He sets to work cleaning up the place, sweeping up glass and mopping the floors, making it look at least better. The job done, he gets back to his dream work in spite of what Van told him. Abby is awoken to a boy's voice calling her name, and she attempts to rouse her bro to no avail, meaning that of course she seizes the opportunity to explore the place on her own. Meanwhile, in Dreamland, Mike tries to bargain with the blonde boy if he can help. What will you give me? The boy asks. Anything, he offers desperately. The boy runs off, leaving behind a drawing of the yellow rabbit. He wakes up to Abby gone and hears her screaming. Fearing the worst, he runs to her, finding her surrounded by Freddy and his pals. However, there was nothing to fear, as the animatronics were just tickling her too much. Oh boy, isn't that always the way? Freddy gives Mike the stink eye until Abby confirms that he's cool, and the yellow glow in his eyes subsides. She beams that they just want to play and shows off that they like pictures, handing Bonnie a drawing of a heart, tying back to that idea of how children communicate. Mike is still nervous about these crazy critters and tells his sis that it is time to go. She is bummed to leave her new friends and has to give Freddy a hug on the way out. Aww. After putting Abby to bed, Mike tries to reconcile with what the heck is even going on here. One of Abby's drawings catches his eyes, featuring what must be the kids from his dream, one with a cupcake on a shirt and one with a hook hand, etc. As he puts together, yep, these are the spirits of the children that are housed within the animatronics. He confirms as much with Abby in the morning, and she shrugs, of course it's ghost children in the suits. How else could they move the robots? Like it's the most logical thing in the world. He broaches the subject of Garrett, which apparently the family didn't discuss much. Yet somehow, Abby has a drawing depicting that exact moment when he is driven away. Mike clarifies he's not mad, but wants to understand who told her. Was it the blonde boy? She nods in confirmation that it was. With the hope that Freddy and his friends can help with Abby's coaxing, they return to the restaurant, finding Vanessa already there. Showcasing that the robots truly do still contain the souls of their victims, Abby leads the whole gang in a plan to build a big fort that they can all sit inside. The fort complete, they all lie in formation on the ground, and Abby is happy here. She finds something is missing. They need a roof, and Vanessa, along with Mike, go to find something suitable. Again, Van seems to really know the place well, even where they keep the tablecloths. Another odd amalgamation of metal and tech wizardry catches his eyes. Van knows all about this too, telling him to not touchy. It's an older model of animatronic featuring a spring lock. The idea was to keep the machinery in place so a person could wear the suit. It wound up being unstable, and she gives him a demo with a broom. She shoves it in, and the lock activates, shattering the wood to bits. Yeah, that's pretty dangerous. He tries to get her to open up again, but Van changes the subject back to Garrett and his plan to get Abby to ask the bots. She tells him to drop the whole thing, and he argues that it's not her business. She gets ultra serious, growling to let it go. Who are you? He asks again. Someone trying to help is all she'll admit. Abby is having a full-on dance party with her pals to Wild One before she can ask him anything. She goes to pluck a guitar, which malfunctioned earlier. They try to stop her, but it's too late, and Abby gets electrocuted. She comes to on the floor and goes right to Vanessa for a hug. Ooh, major ouch for Mike, I'm sure. You like the stranger more than your brother. Probably not a good sign. He keeps trying to ask her more questions, and she shuts him down. You can do what you want with your own life, but if you bring Abby back here, I will shoot you myself. Dang, that is pretty serious. Mike is forced to make a tough decision, reaching out to evil Aunt Jane to keep Abby out of danger. The girl is awoken to the alluring smell of bacon, yet it's a trap coming out to her aunt and Mike. She instantly feels betrayed, despite Mike trying to insist that it isn't what it looks like. She emotionally tells him he hates him and proceeds to cross him out from all of her drawings. Pretty harsh. Mike won't be deterred from his one-track mind and gets more pills for another Sleepy Town session. However, this time things immediately feel completely different, sharing another happy moment with his family. Mike even knows that this isn't how it happened. This isn't real, but it could be, the blonde boy chimes in. He acknowledges that this isn't what he asked for, but it is what he truly wants. He doesn't want to find the man responsible. He wants to somehow save Garrett, even though it's completely impossible, of course. Mike has a handle on things well enough to understand this. He's gone. They're all gone. The boy gestures to the, well, very real looking family. You can have this dream every night and be together again with everyone. Although it does have some substantial strings attached. Remember when he said he would give them anything? Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, they want Abby. Even his family agrees it's for the best. She's so happy with him, and he was never the right person to take care of her. All playing on his insecurities, Mike gets teary-eyed and sniffles, okay, to the boy's delight. Mike quickly regrets his choice, and the kids vanish. He shouts out to the treetops to leave Abby alone. The kids start sneaking by him and slashing at him one by one in formation. He comes to, finding himself strapped into the murder machine, the deadly blades grinding closer towards him. He fiddles with the locks and manages to get free just in the nick of time, really showing how much these furries aren't messing around. He stumbles into the Burgle Gang's bodies, also noticing an inactive dog animatronic amongst a bunch. I actually didn't know about this particular reference here regarding a hoax from the first game. A rumor was started regarding another character hidden in Five Nights at Freddy 1, a dog called Sparky. This wasn't true, but the filmmakers pay tribute to that here in a pretty cool way. Jane checks in on Abby, but gets no response. She sits down to flip through the cable, not noticing a decrepit-looking Freddy lingering behind her. Gold Freddy, apparently. Doesn't look gold to me. From in a room, Abby hears a loud thud, and she is happy to see her friend. The boy corrects that's not Freddy, and ominously says they're all waiting for you. She spots her aunt's legs poking out around the corner, and the boy laughs it off as, oh, silly Aunt Jane fell asleep. They call a taxi, which is driven by another familiar face, Corey X. Kinchin. He freaks at the sight in his back seat, which Abby finds amusing. Mike awakes to Vanessa tending to his wounds at some police place. Again, the dream attack somehow translated into the real world. He reveals that they tried to kill him, but figures that she probably knew all about all this madness already. He spills about his dream deal and wants to fix it. Just what do they want with Abby? Well, to make her like them, of course. Just then, Abby and Golden Freddy have made it to the pizzeria, ready to put their twisted plan into motion. Poor naive Abby has no idea, excitedly running inside. To her confusion, Golden Freddy waits outside and even vanishes into thin air. This all makes me think that this bot and their entire interaction were all a figment of sorts, because only this version of Freddy seems to be able to leave the bounds of the restaurant. Finally, Vanessa starts to divulge just how much she knows about things around here. When those kids went missing back in the 80s, the police searched everywhere in the building, but never found their bodies. That's because the suits don't just contain the children's souls, but their bodies as well. She cries the kids don't want to hurt anyone, but it's the bad man who took them that is influencing them somehow to kill. He took everything from them, but they don't even remember. He really wants to know who she's talking about, and Van pulls out a photo from her pocket, featuring her and someone in a yellow bunny suit. Her father, William Afton, and the man responsible for all these murders, and building Freddy's and everything. When it comes to Garrett, she says she truly did not know of his fate when they met, but now it's pretty obvious that William took him too. Mike just wants to save his sister, and she provides a taser that will temporarily fell the faux animals. He wants her to tag along, but she is too afraid to face her father, understanding now how much he has really messed her up. She does at least give him the keys to her patrol car, and Mike barrels his way towards Freddy's. He sneaks through the air vents and comes to the main stage just in time to see Abby being led away by Chica. Freddy seems to catch a glimpse of him staring daggers in his direction, but returns to his performance. Mike silently dumps a bucket of water on the stage and unleashes his taser, taking out the whole crew temporarily. Chica brings Abby to the mangle machine. More specifically, it looks like an unused puppet or doll animatronic to make Abby truly one of them, not just kill her. The bot's eyes turn yellow and stuffs her into the suit. Mike comes to save the day and promises that he's going to be better, saying that he loves her. She loves him too, but points out they better get going, seeing Cupcake is still up and running. Mike gets a surprise attack courtesy of the treat, Cupcake chomping on his leg and dragging him down the hall. He shouts for Abby to get out of here, being watched by the Foxy boy. He reemerges from the curtains as Foxy with red eyes to kill. Cupcake launches towards Mike and he chokes them out with the taser. Foxy continues stalking Abby T-1000 style with his whirring mechanical limbs. She accidentally bumps a machine, drawing Foxy's attention, but she is able to move to the ball pit when he comes to her hiding spot. Meanwhile, Mike is on his own in the main room until he hears approaching thudding steps. It's Springtrap, aka the Yellow Bunny, aka the killer William Afton in the flesh. Mike tries his trusty taser, but it has no effect on the meat bag within, and Mike is tossed away. Foxy makes it to Abby's spot in the balloon pit. Luckily, there's a shock, courtesy of Vanessa, taking the fox out. Yay! She did show up to face her long festering family trauma after all. Springtrap taunts Mike about not leaving things alone. Well, lucky me, he chuckles. First I killed your brother, now I kill you. Symmetry, my friend. He orders his children to wake up. He has something for them to play with. The machines regain movement, now with yellow eyes, the yellow seeming to indicate that William is currently controlling them. Will has heard that he has a sister and promises that she'll love it here, cleaning his knife stew style right out of screen. Farewell, Michael Schmidt, he growls, and Vanessa steps in, training a gun on her pops, who after removing the mask we realize is also Steve Raglan. Almost like he set Mike up the entire time. There might be something more to that. It's like he recognized, oh, did I kill your brother? I think I did. I killed so many children it's hard to keep track of, Mikey boy. He goes there to put the gun away. She's not gonna fire, and she pulls the trigger, proving him wrong. Mike grunts awake for the 5 millionth time and has an idea. Use Abby's drawing to tell the bots the truth about the yellow rabbit. Will is preoccupied with giving his daughter shit. She had one job, he snarls. She talks back and he lifts her into the air by the throat. Spotting Abby nearby, he stabs Van in the gut and leaves her to die. Thanks, Dad. Abby pins up the new drawing on the wall and the lights all blink erratically. What have you done? William asks in fear, and Mike resets the breakers. The machines take in the violent scene and put together what really happened. They turn on William, who still tries to demoralize them as worthless little beasts. Cupcake is unleashed, chomping down on his spring lock, which activates it, triggering it to painfully crush his insides. The others all look on with vengeance in their now red glowing eyes. Will already knows his fate is sealed and puts his mask back on, threatening, I always come back. The process complete, and Will becomes another of his weird furry incarnations with his soul inside. Foxy hooks him, and the gang drags him to the back. The others get Vanessa to her feet, and as they escape, the place starts crumbling from above. Sometime later, things are much better in Mike's little family, and the teacher at school praises him. Whatever he's doing, it's working. Even seeing her hanging out with other kids, probably safer than murderous animatronics. They stop by to visit Van in the hospital, who is in a coma due to her injury. Mike gushes that she was there when it mattered most, and thanks her for saving his and Abby's lives. The girl still longs to see her killer pals. There's no one to take care of them anymore, and wants to pay them a visit. Mike mulls it over and offers that you never know what can happen. Back at Freddy's, the blonde boy watches William in the back groaning in agony. He shakily holds out a hand reaching for him, and the boy coldly closes the door, trapping him for now. In a mid-credits scene, poor Corey gets one last jump scare from another unwanted fare. He's fast asleep in the cab, and a knock on the window wakes him up. He's annoyed and glances to his passenger seat, seeing none other than Balloon Boy, giving him a good fright. Now, we don't know where Balloon Boy is off to, but this does make it appear that he can leave the pizzeria and move on his own, despite his diminutive stature. Then there's a final cryptic message buried at the end of the credits. A heavily modulated voice comes on and spells out, "Come find me," letter by letter. Find who exactly would be the big question here. I could see why it would make sense that it's William behind the message, with his whole I will always come back thing right out of the games, but we already know where he is, in a closet at Freddy's. The come find me thing doesn't make much sense in that case, unless he is reaching out to someone else to find him. To me, there is a huge unresolved plot thread that is at the center of the story. What what actually happened to Garrett. Sure, William could have just iced him, but it stands to reason that he would have put Garrett in a suit like the others. And there are other suits strewn around the restaurant that appear used. Even if not, we've seen that souls that are at unrest can communicate to the living world. This brings up a prominent aspect to how things work that I don't really recall from the games: the importance of electricity. Throughout the story, every time Mike dreams, there's a squelch from the speakers, or several times he resets the breakers, which literally resets the animatronics themselves. There's an obvious connection between electricity and the spirits communicating. It's well known that ghosts or spirits can communicate via electricity, and it feels like that is the idea being utilized here. It's through this that the spirits of the kids can enter Mike's dreams, almost as though he's kind of reaching through to the spirits world. Maybe even an astral projection kind of thing. His being entering another realm of existence. So perhaps this "come find me" message is Garrett reaching out to his brother, lost somewhere in the afterlife, yet hopeful that he can finally find him and save him, at least in some sense. Either way, I don't think the series is quite done with Garrett yet. Heck, we don't know what was going on with Balloon Boy either. Maybe Garrett got stuffed in there somehow. However, this message and the particular music box sound heard are both specific references to the game series, the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame from Freddy's 2. Both things are lifted straight out of the game and could indicate the impending debut of another threatening animatronic, the marionette or the puppet. In the game, the puppet's identity is tied to William's story in the form of his first victim, Charlotte, but I could definitely see Garrett taking her place. He could have been William's first victim after all. The timeline is quite vague in that regard. We don't even know what present day is, you know? No one has cell phones or nothing. This idea would make it more personal for Mike to find his brother, and perhaps, as we saw in the game series, set his spirit free once and for all to be at peace. Cue the waterworks. Garrett, I'm so sorry. You have to let me go, Mike. I'll miss you! And his spirit flies into the sky and disappears into the stars, you know? More melodrama for you on a platter there. This whole theory really brings into the whole remix of the game lore aspect that the movie takes, and it really feels like they are trying to make the movie universe its own contained thing, but also heavily referencing the original series, because it's honestly kind of nuts how deep this stuff goes. It's a little scary, really. For example, when it comes to our hapless new security guard Mike, in the first game he is kind of a non-entity, just some poor sack trying to make a paycheck in spite of increasing danger each shift. Could be just as simple as that. But as the series expanded, there were clues that Michael Schmidt and another important figure, Michael Afton, yes, son of William, are one and the same. Now that's a whole other can of worms, but once more we see that kind of remix aspect from the games, because Vanessa as well has a very different trajectory from her game counterpart, her being the daughter of William in the film, almost taking Mike's place in the story in that way. Yet even in the games, her story is still closely tied to William. Initially a secret protagonist, she becomes corrupted by the virus incarnation of Springtrap known as Glitchtrap. Unfortunately, as a result, she becomes the killer bunny Vanny and goes on to kill at least 9 kids in her own right. Quite a switch from her movie counterpart, but once more I could see them revisiting this idea and making the grievously injured Van follow in her father's footsteps to become the new de facto head of Freddy's crew. Jesus, I guess this is my unholy welcome to the rabbit hole of madness that is the mythology of the series. All that to say, there are a lot of interesting ideas established that could pay off in really fulfilling ways, while also paying tribute to the game series in the inevitable sequel. Let's hope FNAF 2 is bigger and better than before. With that, we reach the conclusion of this Indie Explained for Five Nights at Freddy's. Now I try to focus on the bigger story overall, and of course there's tons of references and Easter eggs I missed throughout the movie, so if you want to see a more in-depth video on the movie, let me know. Also, don't forget, before we go, you can send me requests for any movies or TV shows you'd like to see me explain by sending them my way on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you think of Five Nights at Freddy's and its ending? Who do you think is behind the "come find me" message? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.